And of course, webcam microphone up close.
Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
See, but I have the files. You know, I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? You know, pistols and fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information. Because seriously, they don't want you to have these two sources whenever I try to prove out. You know, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to sadly disappoint another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty old man, huh?
Really? You can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions? Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of...
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from FEMA Region 2. 3. Within the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America, we bring you the Ochelli Effect.
I damn sure know I'm an original. We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for a 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And that is that Saturday night, and I am live, but it's not that crappy show that they still run on NBC, apparently. No, it's a different crappy show. The Ochelli Effect, right here on UCY.TV radio. I am Chuck Ochelli, your host. So, a lot of things we've covered recently. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, especially those who have come to the website. If you're listening to this further downstream, you just go to ucy.tv/TOE. You'll find an archive there of the last 10 shows, a chat room, which is always active and seems to have people in it 24 hours a day talking about something. I make no promises or assertions as to what it is they might be discussing, but you can go right ahead there and interact with them. Some interesting and pretty cool people there. So, having trouble clearing my throat. I've been criticized quite a few times, on air and off air, for not discussing chemtrails enough, for not discussing stuff like geoengineering, for not having Dane Wigginton on my show. Well, I don't have Dane Wigginton tonight. Instead, I do have somebody else who is pretty knowledgeable about this subject, and we're going to explore all of that, and his name is Sylvain Henry. As soon as I get him on, we will begin that discussion, and yes, this will be the first time that I actually devote an entire show to discussing chemtrails in general. And we'll get, first, I guess, you know what, we're going to probably have to think about this a little bit and get a basic overview and probably just sort of pick Sylvain's brain to see what a 101 would kind of look like regarding chemtrails, like how would we explain this to the uninitiated and all that. So, Sylvain Henry, how you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I'm really glad to have you on, and you might have not heard, but I did explain that this is the first time that I'm actually devoting a full show to the discussion regarding chemtrails. So, I know you from Mass Action Demand, which is an interesting kind of moniker, and I wondered if you could explain what Mass Action Demand is to everybody, and we'll kind of go from there, and just also give everybody a sort of kindergarten version of what chemtrails are, just for those who might not know. Okay. So let's start with Mass Action Demand. What is that?
Okay. In short, the acronym is MAD for Mass Action Demand. And my motto is mass, not alone, action, not complaints, and demand, not requests. And so it's becoming a big group. It's growing very fast. We're several thousand. And essentially, most of the people are finding common ground, and that common ground is that we are against what is being sprayed over our heads. And some people call it chemtrails, some people call it geoengineering. The scientists call it geoengineering, and okay, is it happening or is it not happening? Okay, the governments, the Council on Foreign Relations, a number of bodies, including the UK Parliament, and I'm talking about government bodies here, are saying that we should be considering this. As a matter of fact, the UK funded some tests on this, and they're trying to find the best way to spray these chemicals, either sulfates or aluminum oxide, alumina, over us, either by plane or by boat using these giant blimps that will carry a hose from the tanker, the ship, up to the sky, and they can just spray a continent by going around it. So they're saying they want to do it. They're saying that we won't have a choice. And one of their, the leading mouthpiece for them is Dr. David Keith, who went to Harvard, is now, I believe, in the University of Calgary, who is saying, he was on a talk show in the United States, and essentially saying, yes, it will affect people, it will kill people, some people, a lot of people, but it's the price that they're willing to pay to control the climate. Now, the big issue that is dividing the movement right now is the issue of global warming. Is it happening or is it not happening? Is the spraying of chemtrails causing the global warming? Or is geoengineering the fix to? Of course, everybody knows that, we should stop burning fossil fuels and using other sources. But that is not the issue. The issue is not the debate on whether global warming is real, whether it's going to happen, whether it's going to flood us, and that's not the issue. The issue is that they have started doing it right now. Now, to those who are uninitiated, they can go on YouTube and do their own research using these two words, chemtrails and geoengineering, and make their own mind about it. My job is not to convince the uninitiated, just, to tell them where they can find out for themselves. My job is to try to unite those who are convinced into a solid action. Mm-hmm. So the Council on Foreign Relations is, how do you say, it's a globalist organization. It promotes globalization, free trade, reducing financial regulations for transnational corporations. They are promoting it on their website, and they're calling it planetary scale or planetary-wide geoengineering. They want to do this around the planet. So without going too much into the details of it, what I recommend is better stop the danger we know than the danger we fear. The danger we know that is happening right now, they're spraying it right now. So, that's an overview. Yeah.
Let me just ask you a question, though, because here's something that comes up a lot, and it is the fact that this stuff is not really new. This has been going on quite a while. I mean, there's reports of it, this type of aerosol spraying in order to manipulate weather was utilized as far back as at least the Vietnam War, right? And this is what it is. It's weather manipulation or modification. For whatever the purpose is, regardless of whether you think their purpose is correct or not, we're still talking about toxins being sprayed over mass populations. So what the problem is that this stuff is going to filter down, is going to end up in the soil, is ending up in the soil, is ending up in the water supplies, right? I mean, I'm not out of line saying this, right?
No, that's right. I'm reminded of the first line, the opening line of the cartoon, the animation Heavy Metal. I don't know if you've heard it, but it says, "A shadow shall fall over the universe, and evil will grow in its path, and death will come from the skies." Well, the only thing I can say about that is that governments have been known, it is on record, to spray things in the air that has caused the deaths of people. Okay, you just mentioned, like in Vietnam, the geoengineering that happened there. can talk in detail about that. But that was back in 1964. I was looking at some old Hitler movies, and I found even a case of 1936 where there were chemtrails in the sky over a castle where Hitler used to hang around and have these international conferences. So the origin goes back several decades.
This is what we know about, honestly. I mean, there's probably more to it, but these are easily cited examples. And I'd love to hear you actually elaborate on the situation in Vietnam. I had heard about it being in the 70s. I didn't know it was as far back as 1964.
Oh yes. I forget the name of the father of geoengineering, but essentially what's happening is we had the situation in Vietnam is that it's a jungle, okay? Mm. And the pilots can't see the enemy because they're hidden under all this cover of leaves, okay? And so they invented a product to defoliate the trees, okay? And it's a toxic chemical, and it has affected the lives not only of the people. Well, they were spraying on the enemy and their own American troops. Both have died as a result of this. The Army doesn't care, but that is a known fact. As a matter of fact, Vietnam has sued the United States government for using weapons of mass destruction, and failed, and they didn't get a penny from them. However, the U.S. troops sued their government and got a settlement for $180 million, but it's under the wraps, the details of it, but they did get compensation for it, those who survived.
Right, there was compensation to survivors and also their offspring regarding Agent Orange. And this is one of the things that we've always heard about related to Vietnam. And it was actually in there to be a defoliating agent to take care of the problem of canopy cover, which is what they called it, because you couldn't bomb certain areas. We're not talking about nuclear bombs or anything like this. We're talking about pretty standard munitions. But the problem was that the density of the jungle coverage, when you were trying to attack ground troops or some of these smaller, more mobile type buildings and things like this, was there. So the concept was that they could defoliate the area more. They would have less coverage to work with, and this is exactly what the purpose was of Agent Orange anyway. And one of the delivery systems utilized for it was this aerosol spraying, which is the same type of thing that we're seeing now elsewhere. But it's a good example of where we can find it on record. And you're right, this is one of the few cases where where there has been a lawsuit brought. What do they call those exactly? Those collective lawsuits, where somebody is able to sue as a group of individuals against a corporation, a company, whatever. In this case, it was the United States, and actually they did win. But you're also right. The details of their proofs and all of that, part of the settlement agreement was to make sure that the world never really does know the true extent of what occurred there. And this is something that you would figure, hey, this is maybe some sort of a mistake made on behalf of the United States government. They made a mistake trying to do certain things because they were trying to win a war and justify it in some way. But the truth is that this is not a justified error on their part, something that was unforeseeable as far as creating problems for individuals much later on. And here we see a primary example of what happens when things are being sprayed. Now,
but that's not geoengineering. That's just spraying some poisons. Okay,
that's just spraying poisons. That was my next point. Yeah. So please, go on into the weather modification aspect of it.
Okay. Before I go into that aspect of it, I want to remind the listeners that Agent Orange is actively being spread over North America right now. And there's a case in court right now because they were spraying some forests here in Ontario, and a number of students were hired for marking trees and stuff, and they sprayed over them as well. But that's another issue. Coming back to geoengineering and Vietnam, in 1964, this famous meteorologist developed a way to modify the weather to make either to make a condition of extreme fog or to make it rain heavily. everybody has heard of the monsoons in Vietnam. They're pretty horrible. Now, the Vietnamese are brilliant people. I mean, the Americans couldn't lick them. They had to leave, okay? Actually, the Americans haven't won a war since World War II, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't think that's their purpose. But now, since they removed the canopy, the leaf cover, the Vietnamese had to find another place to hide. They went underground. Mm-hmm. They built these massive tunnel complexes made out. They reinforced it with cement, and so even from the air, the Apache helicopters couldn't see them, and they would shoot the helicopters. So they had to. They used geoengineering or climate engineering to increase the cloud cover so that the helicopters could be they could be heard, but they couldn't be seen. So it makes it a more difficult target. But also to bring the monsoon period sooner and control it at will, they actually flooded them and drowned them like rats inside these tunnels. So even with all of this, they still didn't win. And so jungle technology or warfare is not the strength of Americans. So it's been happening for a while now. Some people will say, well, governments are not evil. They can't do anything to harm people. Well, I will talk about two experiments connected to aviation industry. One is in the UK, where an entire city was sprayed using airplanes with some kind of bacteria that caused the death of many people. And that's documented, and people can research it. In St. Louis, they sprayed a radioactivity over the population, and many of them died of, cancers and tumors. And that is reported as well too in the literature, and people can search it in YouTube if they will. So they have done it. Not only have they done it, they have made a law making it legal for governments to do it for experimental purposes, and that can be verified as well. So they can make murder legal if they say so. They just sign it, okay?
Well, right, and this is the justification that's used for it, is that they have the right to do so. There's many, many examples of this. There was the spraying of the subway in New York City. There are the various experiments with venereal diseases being introduced into populations. We've all heard about this kind of thing. So, for people to say that a government would not test on their own citizens or would not test on civilians is absolutely insane. It's public record at this point. It's not something that's secret. At the time, it was secret, though, and the population was uninformed. Which is what I contend is going on now with these chemtrails, is that we're not really being informed of all of what's going on. We have the evidence that aluminum is definitely part of the plan, but outside of that, there is it is endless, the possibilities of what could be introduced into this aerosolized system, for lack of a better word. I know I'm really not using the best terms here, but I mean, just in generally speaking, though, we don't even know really exactly how bad this stuff is.
Exactly. Now, let's just imagine for a second. I just had a thought. If you were Dr. Evil and you wanted to reduce the population, because many government leaders, starting with Henry Kissinger, that's his goal, and he's been stating it since he was under Nixon, even before that. Now, how would you do it in a way that wouldn't destroy the property and the infrastructure, in the way that, would you use radiation? No, because that's dirty, and it's going to be sticking around for like 20, 30 generations, or maybe even more. So they wouldn't spread radiation over us, but though radiation is coming to us because of Fukushima and so on, would they use bacteria and viruses? No, because that's dirty also. It could have an effect on them, it could damage them. Because they're living organisms, while not in the case of viruses. Viruses between living and dead, but bacteria are. But these things, both of them replicate. and they can damage not only humans but livestock and wild animals and maybe even plants and domestic animals. So that would be dirty too. So if you were Dr. Evil, you would use something like alumina because it's heavy, it falls to the ground, some people breathe it, and it affects your mind, causes Alzheimer's and so on. And people lose the willpower to fight, to resist. They forget what they had for breakfast 5 minutes ago. And it causes a number of things. So does fluoridation, so does vaccination. But alumina would be a great way to do it. And now alumina is discussed in the research, the literature. If people look at patents for aerosol geoengineering, okay, Google patents, you can search that. It's in the literature. Dr. David Keefe promotes alumina, but he also is saying that maybe sulfates. But sulfates, people can smell them. Alumina is tasteless and smellless, and you just make it microfine, so people don't really see it. But we do actually see it. If you look at the sun is not the same anymore. We used to have a yellow sun. When I was a kid and I would draw the sun, I would draw it yellow. And now it's not yellow anymore. And now it's kind of hazy. You don't see a sharp contour of the sun. So it would be a good way to depopulate. And then once a lot of people are gone, then you can repopulate with the higher breed and the master race or whatever. Now, is this crazy? Let's think about that for a second. Look at the underground tunnels in the United States. There are cities. There are underground cities with roads and so on, underground, with shopping malls, condominiums, supplies for several years. Why would they make these complexes, like the one in Denver and southwestern United States? Some of them are called DUM, Deep Underground Military Bases. Some are military. Why would they bother doing that? Is it only for radiation? I don't know. But why do people invest in these things? And maybe some of your audience would know people who actually construct these things. I know this one guy, Walter, who does them in New England. Well, he did it for a while. He must be retired by now. But back then they were really cheap, $75,000 for a family unit underground. And you have oxygen cylinders, you have water recycling, from your urine back to water, and air filters and so on. And also there's Elizabeth Clare Prophet. She's a religious leader. Well, she's passed away. But her followers have been building incredible complexes, I believe, in 11 countries right now. So this is not a new thing. These underground cities have been built for decades. They're just getting bigger and bigger. And they're accessible only to the elite. Why would they bother doing this? Is it only for nuclear? I don't think so.
Well, no, it doesn't.
But, yeah.
No, it doesn't. It definitely doesn't make sense that it would just be for the radiation or the radioactivity problems that could arise, from a Fukushima-style disaster on a massive scale, or from a war. That's definitely not sensible in my mind for them to be just for that. But can we go back to the aluminum just a little bit, because it's been explained to me that aluminum, what it does when it enters into the body, because it is a toxic material for the human body. Okay, and of course there have been patents recently where there's agricultural crops that are being genetically modified in order to be resistant to dealing with aluminum-rich soil and stuff like this. That's gone on, but it also ends up being one of those things that helps to carry stuff like fluoride into the brain. Makes it a whole lot more effective. Actually seems to be a great adjutant and carrier for a lot of other toxins, which are available, through your food, your water, etc., etc. And that's the way I kind of look at the aluminum thing. And aluminum does seem to be one of the most prevalent things that people have actually been able to witness, have been able to measure by taking soil samples, by examining this stuff as it falls. And it makes you wonder exactly, what the purpose of that is. And I'm curious if you have an idea about that. I mean, what do you think it's for, other than to obviously poison all of us?
Well, absolutely. If you look into any medical book, okay, there is no biological function that has been attributed to this metal, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, as a matter of fact, all the medical books will tell you that aluminum concentration in tissues and organs results only in one thing: toxicity and dysfunction or disease, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, so there's no, I mean, the fact that it's falling from the sky, I mean, is there a mine up there in the clouds? I don't think so. Okay, it's being dropped in very, very high concentrations in certain places, as a matter of fact. So it is associated with a number of diseases. And however, the medical community is afraid to talk about this for different reasons, because they're controlled in the United States and here in Canada by the College of Physicians and Surgeons, which is the Royal College, which is controlled by the Queen of England, actually. And
here we have the American...
What?
Here we have the American Medical Association, which is something that they all belong to here, and it's absolutely under the thumb of the corporate interests with the big pharmaceutical companies. Pretty much, if you don't go along with the plan according to the AMA, you're not going to keep your license very long, and you're not going to do very well in your chosen profession. That's why you have to stick to the vaccines that they're pushing. That's why you have to support all of the crap that they want to shove down our throats for the diseases, whether they be imagined or created in one way or another by some other medication that we're already taking, etc., etc. And then this is the incestuous relationship between these organizations that are supposed to provide standards for medical people and all of that, and when in actuality all they serve as is a control mechanism for the authorities to exert control over medical professionals, I think.
Right. Now, and since I just said before that it leads to toxicity in all mammals, okay, not only us, then it makes me or makes anybody wonder, why would they bother putting that inside vaccines? It's toxic, and they put it inside vaccine. Mm-hmm. Even squalene is toxic. Even mercury is toxic. Why do they want to inject us with mercury and thimerosal and squalene and this alumina? It doesn't make sense. Canada, Harper, our Prime Minister, just announced to the world very proudly with a big smile that he's giving $500 million in vaccine to Africa. Oh, what a joy. I mean, these people are starving to death. They'd rather have an orange, thank you, please, than being injected. It hurts, these people, not only, I just think they're psychopaths. Some of them, tell you the truth.
Yeah, but then we're told that, it's absolutely insane that the local populations are turning around and attacking some of the Doctors Without Borders over there and stuff like that, blaming them for literally bringing disease into their midst. We've seen this problem where they're saying that they're bringing polio and they're bringing polio vaccines, but of course those are just backwards natives, right? They don't quite understand, our great technology that happens to be making them extremely ill, apparently, one way or another, and you know what I'm saying when I say this.
Absolutely, and it's funny that Ebola comes from Africa and AIDS comes from Africa and all these horrible diseases. They're trying to depopulate that poor continent. 40 million or maybe 50 million people have died of AIDS already. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, in Norway, many people may know this, they have a seed bank, and where they keep seeds of all the crops, trees, and everything of the planet. And not genetically modified, thank you. It's organic seeds. This is built inside a rock mountain on an island in the middle of, frozen Norwegian waters. Mm-hmm. It's guarded by, men with guns, and it only contains seeds. Now, why in the world would they bother having this Noah's Ark, of seeds? Are they going to be... There's something going on here because they can't keep these seeds indefinitely. Either they replenish them, or they're going to be doing something soon. But look, they inject us with alumina. We get it from the rainwater. We get it from the snow. So don't eat the snow. We breathe the stuff, and now Monsanto has a patent for alumina-resistant seeds.
Right. See, that's what I was talking about before. Is they're making it that way because obviously they work hand in hand with the very same people that are spraying this crap. Because that's the only proper explanation for why you would require crops that grow in aluminum contaminated soil. Essentially, I mean, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty reasonable explanation, I figure, from the crazy conspiracy theorists here. You might be developing those because you see a need for them, because you're creating a need for them. And, of course, the seed bank is an interesting point as well, because, after all, they're going to need some sort of reset after they get done screwing around with everything. Who knows what will happen. They may actually require having to do a reset at some point or whatever, so they will require those good, uncontaminated, untainted, untwisted heirloom seeds in order to possibly repopulate the earth from a botanical standpoint, I guess. Or maybe it's even worse than that, Sylvain. Maybe I'm just, a little too fanciful about what I think here, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, whatever it is, the government knows that it's happening. Mm-hmm. They have authorized it. A lot of what our governments do, they do in secret behind closed doors. And not only that, whatever documents they signed are not open to the public. Okay? You take, for instance, the free trade agreement between Canada and the United States. Oh, of course, on the website you will have an outline, a detailed outline of it, but the fine print is kept in a bunker about an hour north of Ottawa, the capital of Canada, and Canadians are not allowed to see it. And those who signed the free trade agreement, and by the way, it benefits only elite corporations, multinational corporations. It does nothing if you have a shoe shop, It's only for their benefit. So these... what scares me is the following. We're running out of time in terms of this fight against geoengineering. They've made up their mind. The UK and the United States will be controlling it. They will be needing about $330 billion a year annually, every year, to keep on spraying us until they accomplish their dirty, sinful business. And we're going to be paying for this stuff, of course. And we're already paying for it. So it's what can I say? They're doing it. They're planning it. They say they're controlling it, and they don't care about us. And they say we don't have a choice, and they scare us. If we don't do this, then we're all going to be burning. And look, global warming. I would welcome some global warming. I mean, here, like in Buffalo, they had 7 feet of snow. Talk about global warming. Well, they say, well, that's part of global warming. It's global cooling. Come on, they're insane, these people.
Well, this is why they adopted the moniker climate change to discuss this anymore, because people were saying, well, how is it warming up if it's getting colder where I am, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, so they started calling it climate change. But again, see, but like you brought out, in the very first sentence that you came on here with, it's not really relevant when you consider the fact that we're being poisoned 8 different ways from this stuff over our heads. And I think that they're really ramping up what they're doing. They're increasing the programs, it seems, because there is literally no place that I can go or talk to somebody who bothers to look up at the sky where they can't see these things. They're literally everywhere now, and I think a couple of decades ago, although we can trace back the history, and I would like it if you kind of touched on the Nazi history of it as well a little bit, but the thing is, even if we don't look back in history very much, we do know that in recent decades this has been increased like exponentially. Yeah. Because I was in New Jersey, I was seeing it a lot. I'm in North Carolina now. I see it, nearly daily. There's sort of a rhythm to it when it comes to the rain patterns around here, though, I've noticed. Mm-hmm. But I've also been told that by other people. And mind you, none of this stuff is any good, and I don't think that it's fully understood, regardless of how brilliant the scientists are that think they're doing us all a favor by slowing down or dealing with global warming or putting the particles of aluminum into the air to defend us from the sun somehow. It doesn't seem as though they're really taking into account the residual effect here. What you do on this side of the planet will affect the other side of the planet, and on and on. In my opinion.
Well, okay. Well, I want to bring something into this discussion, which is related, but you won't see it right away. And that's the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, with about a dozen countries. Something that was born in New Zealand, but it's an American scheme. Canada's part of it as well. Okay, why I mention this is for the following. Monsanto is scared as hell. I mean, they're so scared they bought an army, okay? And with Apache helicopters, you name it. They own it. They're very, very afraid. And also they're afraid for economic reasons. Their stock is going down because of all the massive protests against them. Okay, they want to control the food supply of the world. For those who don't know who this company is, they make seeds and they make genetically modified seeds. Now, a lot of countries and states and provinces are boycotting them and actually making it illegal in certain cities, provinces, states, and countries for them to do business at all. Now, Monsanto is suing these places, but it's not winning, and so it's afraid. So what it does is that it, of course, a lot of these ex-executives of Monsanto are now in the federal government in the United States. So what they're doing with this TPP partnership agreement, which kicks in a few months, and that's why I'm saying that I'm not scared of global warming at all. The TPP is way worse than this. Okay, so I'm just trying to divert the focus to something that is going to affect us immediately. Mm-hmm. If Canada refuses, after this agreement is signed, which is an act of treason to sign it by a prime minister, if Canada says no to Monsanto genetically modified frankenfoods, well then an international court will sue Canada for many, many hundreds of millions of dollars. And of course, that money is taxpayer money. It comes from our pockets and from our sweat. And they will lose in court. Okay? Mm-hmm. In other words, we won't be able to say to Monsanto anymore, we don't want your franken seeds. You keep them. We're going to have to take them. Okay? We're going to be losing our sovereignty, the sovereignty of our borders. And the multinational or transnational corporations will be in control of our country. If, for instance, many people may know that countries that had a rough time economically, like Greece and Italy, so on, Portugal, and what they do, like for instance in Europe, they just kick out the prime minister and replace him with a banker who's not elected by the people, because governments are being led by corporations directly now. The bankers will come. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I argue all the time that we're in a corporatist nation here in America at this point, and it does appear as though you're moving toward that in Canada. As the United States goes, so does Canada eventually, it seems. I wonder, though, if you could speak to the idea, because you said that it would be an act of treason for the Prime Minister to sign that agreement. I'm wondering why you're saying that.
We give the power of ruling our country to foreign corporations. That's an act of treason. It's high treason as far as I'm concerned.
Mm. Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you. I was just wondering if you could speak to it. That's all.
No. That's fine. I love my country and I love yours, and I've lived in your country for many years, and I love your people, and I love the people of all nations without excluding any nation at all. Okay, but we should maintain our sovereignty, and we shouldn't be led around by corporations, because corporatism is fascism. It's just a nicer word, but it is fascism. When countries are led by corporations, it's fascism. So
right.
And they'll control everything we do. Okay, like for instance, the light bulbs. In the United States, these light bulbs that look like springs?
Yeah.
Well, you don't have a choice anymore. You'll be using that. And they're dangerous. They have mercury inside, and if they blow up, you can lose a leg. You can look in a YouTube video on that. So we're replacing harmful products with inexpensive products, and we won't have a choice in the future. The governments will tell us what we'll have to buy, and we won't have a choice.
Right, and this has effectively happened here regarding our food supply. I mean, it's virtually impossible to find anything that's not genetically modified in your local grocery stores and things like that now. The light bulbs are a good example where we have to accept what is essentially an inferior and more dangerous product under the guise of being conservative regarding energy. Stuff like this, the smart meters, I mean, all of this stuff, though, and it does all tie right into the fact that we're dealing with this overbearing chemicalization of the society, not only being introduced into the food, not only being introduced via fluoride into your water supply, et cetera, but the air you breathe and the soil from which you're going to have to gather your crops, reap your crops, let's just say. All of this stuff is being contaminated now by this spraying over our heads, which I say again, although we have some handle on what some of it is, the extent of it is still not really known. They have a lot of patents on some of these things. As you said, you could simply do a search for aerosol spraying or for geoengineering and patents, and you can find that some of this stuff is publicly known. But I dare say that a great deal more of it has not been known, and is still kind of under wraps. And here's the funny part: if you try and explain this to the uninitiated, they really do look at you like you've lost your mind. I mean, they might be able to accept alien cover-ups. They might be able to accept, the idea that Bigfoot is being hidden by the Democrats, and and that somebody was born on Mars that serves in the Congress. This is a possibility. But when you tell them that those things that are hanging over their heads, that they could literally, all they have to do is look up at the sky and see these clouds that are forming from these trails coming from planes, and see the resulting things that fall to the earth, they still think we're kind of nuts. I mean, it's very backwards to me. You can see this stuff now, and you didn't really see it, like I said, a couple of decades ago. I mean, if you just think about that for a minute, this is not normal and natural. Even when jets did fly over your head in particular areas, it wasn't a constant like this. I mean, there is a big difference between what we used to see out of a contrail and a chemtrail. Just the difference is easy to understand, and I know you know what the difference is, but I'm just saying that it's one of these things where they tell us it's nothing but the harmless, condensation coming from a jet engine, and they don't understand that this kind of stuff, I mean, it's, I've heard it called raid for humans. Literally, I think that's one of the best descriptions for it,
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry I rambled there for a second, but it's just one of those things that I find frustrating, because, I mean, I'm listening to what you're talking about, and I agree with everything you're saying, and I just wonder how it is that we can get other people to understand this who are not already aware that this is a dangerous proposition for every living thing below. It is dangerous for the plants, it is dangerous for the animals, it's dangerous for your dogs, it's dangerous for you. None of this stuff can be any good, and I don't care what the justification is regarding, well, we're going to slow down global warming, and maybe we'll be able to prevent the damage from hurricanes and typhoons and all this other stuff. And meantime, it seems to be doing nothing but making a complex natural matrix a whole lot more hazardous for living things in general.
Right.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead though about what you were discussing. The Trans-Pacific, the TPP.
Once it's signed, we can't do anything about it. They already control the media. They control our, everything. And after that, if we fight Monsanto or the light bulb makers, they'll sue us and they'll take over our country. And that's what they want. And well, who cares? I care. What does it take to make people care about something? I think that a person without principles is like a body without bones. If you're not willing to stand up and even die for something, you're not even worth living. But it's not everybody's cause. I understand some people want to save the animals and in the circus and animal experimentation, and we need people to address all these issues. But if we ourselves are prisoners and we have no choice, then if the elite want to have circuses and make the monkeys and the lions do this, they'll do it. We won't have a choice. It's going to be too late. What does it take for people to act? I don't know. It takes. I guess they need to be shocked into something. If I invited you to my house for dinner and I put a warm stool on the plate, you'd react. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But if I put just a little bit of it, then you would eat it and you say it was a good meal. So, these people, they work gradually because they're cowards and they know they'll be defeated if we, if we're in a state of shock. So I guess we need to be, I won some causes in the past. I haven't won any recently. But the only way I could win in the past was finding the common ground and find people and say, look, is this important enough for you to do something even small about it? And we won. So what is that common denominator of the people? Now, I don't know. What will it take for them to act on anything? If the United States comes up with military conscription, or if they decide to attack Russia, because they're demonizing Russia right now, and so is Canada, and they're making Putin look like Hitler. And even Prince Charles said that he called him Hitler. So what does it take for us to think and react? I don't know. I guess most people are afraid. I guess they're paralyzed with fear.
Well, some people, yeah. I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, what is it that got your attention regarding this issue? How did you actually start to find yourself involved and focused on chemtrails as an issue?
I didn't know anything about it. And it was by accident that a friend of mine asked me to do some renovations at her house. And so I was, painting, doing this and that. And then we had to fix the fan on the roof. So I went on the roof with my son, and I looked at the trails in the sky. And even my son, who was born with seeing chemtrails, he said, "This is not normal, Dad." I said, "Look, I said, I've been looking at the sky for almost 60 years now, and this is definitely not normal." So I went on the internet, and eventually I found the word chemtrail. If I hadn't found that word chemtrail, no matter how many people try to demonize that word, it is a proper word to use. It was invented by the Air Force. I wouldn't have found the issue about the geoengineering. So that's how I found out about it. And then I said, my God, is this happening just over Ottawa? And I found out, no, it's happening in 27 countries. All NATO countries. And so I started asking questions. And I created a group, and this group had one big victory back 3 or 4 years ago when we, on one day, 9 o'clock on Monday morning, we all emailed the Prime Minister of Canada, and we told him we want answers now. And we sent him 6 questions. And, of course, people, I sent a template to people, but they worded it in their own way. Some people were more aggressive than me. I try to be diplomatic but firm, and he didn't respond to any of us, but for 3.5 weeks, almost 4 weeks, there were no chemtrails in Canada. They were afraid. They know that we know. And that was when I was convinced that this is happening and governments know about it because they stopped it.
Well, right. I mean, and look, even if you see a pullback on it, you see a reaction. That's good enough proof, as far as I'm concerned. For you're aware of what we're telling you, even though you didn't make a public proclamation about it. That's pretty interesting in and of itself. I'm wondering also, how is it? Let's just say somebody wants to get involved with your group. How could they find out about it? Go ahead.
Oh, they just Google. Well, first of all, they should Google the word chemtrail and geoengineering first to see if it's worth their while. But then, if they are as mad as hell, then they should join my group, MAD, Mass Action Demand, in Facebook. And but they can reach me by one word, Canadian Spartacus, all one word, and they will find me in Google. And because I've got YouTube, I've got WordPress, and it's all under Canadian Spartacus.
Right, and not to go too far off topic. I mean, we'll get back to it, but you also do these 24-hour radiothons too, right?
Yeah, I did 6 of them, and one a month for 6 months in a row. And I stopped because there was division in the group. I mean, not in the group, in the movement, the worldwide movement. And I wanted to see if I could address that, because we're drifting away from the goal, and the goal is to get them to stop spraying us, not to debate this and debate that. And I'm more like a soldier. I want the enemy to stop doing this, and then we can negotiate and talk and debate and all that stuff. And but if anybody has any doubt that this is happening, they could look at ETC Group, which is a group in Ottawa, where I am. They won't talk to me, but they did something good in the past. They asked for a moratorium, and the United Nations has also followed their lead. The United Nations has asked for a moratorium on geoengineering worldwide, and they sent a message to 193 countries. So why would they ask them to stop doing something that they're not doing? So, well, people can find out the truth. You don't need to have a university degree to find out if this is true or not. Just common sense.
Right. Have you seen the movies What in the World Are They Spraying and Why in the World Are They Spraying and all that?
Yes.
What'd you think of those?
Oh, there were... I didn't meet him. I talk to Michael Murphy every once in a while, and also Dane Wigington, and the people who were in the movie, and I've exchanged some emails with Edward Griffin. Well, not emails, but messages, and I knew these people even before the movies came out, and I was anxious for them to come out, and they had a great impact worldwide. They were a great effort. I couldn't do anything as good. So it opened the eyes of many people, and many people refer to it till this day. There's going to be two other movies. The Poison Sky movie, which is coming out in February, if I'm not mistaken, was delayed. What's his name? Kevin Sorbo, the man who played Hercules in the TV series, is going to be one of the actors.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, Steve Wargo is the director and producer. So that's being wrapped up and edited, and so movies are still being made about it. So it is a topic of discussion.
Right, and Dane Wigington, who you mentioned, does Geoengineering Watch on UCY here.
Yep.
Also on Saturdays, it's replayed other days of the week also, just in case anybody is not aware. And I know you're aware of Dane's work. As you said, you had known him before that movie came out and all that. I think Jack Blood appeared in one of those movies too. But anyway, I know you're aware of Dane's work.
Yes, I do. He's doing a lot of great work. Him and I have a different focus. and I just want to stop the spraying while we can, because and that's all I want to do, because it's going to be too late in a few months, and all the discussions about global warming will make a difference in the future, because they'll do whatever they want, and they can even sue you for saying that geoengineering is bad. You know.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, because not only do you have to deal with the societal pressure behind, well, gee, you're talking craziness, you got to put your tinfoil hat on and all that kind of good stuff, and I always say I'd like to apologize to the individuals that I have ever referred to as wearing tinfoil hats, because you were probably correct. So I always say that when that comes up. But the fact is, all joking aside here, this is one of the great threats that is a constant and is over all of our heads at all times, and this is something that does need to be done. And I agree with you that look, we can debate about exactly how far these residual effects go, exactly what damage has been done or could be done by further spraying. It needs to come to a stop, and like now. This is what the reality is. But meanwhile, we still have the denials. That it even exists. We have the cover-ups, let's just say, regarding exactly what is the purpose or the plan behind it, so that we have difficulty arguing with it. I don't know what you have to say to that, but I would wonder, what you think the individual could do, aside from joining a group and trying to speak collectively. I mean, is there anything the individual can do about this right now?
Well, yes. Okay. Now, those who deny it, they fall into different categories. Some are, those who deny it are, some of them are trolls, disinformation agents, or shills, I found, in my group, I had a few of them before. I don't have any anymore, I don't think. Maybe I do. There's so many members. But they're not active, They actively fight us. Why would a grown-up, mature person spend hours, days, weeks, months, years within a group that he denies? Why should he even be in the group? Attacking people for their beliefs, insulting them personally, calling them names and this and that. I mean, when somebody's calling you names to make you change your opinion, something's funny, okay? So Now we've been educated about people like that, and they're probably being paid for what they're doing. Like, I wouldn't spend my life trying to prove that Santa Claus doesn't exist. I've got better things to do with my life. Okay.
Well, right, and I saw this kind of thing with the JFK assassination research. You'd have people winding up in your groups where they would spend their entire time explaining how, even though the thrust, the main focus of the group was to try and create public awareness that there was a conspiracy that killed this man as opposed to a single gunman. And if it was just that sort of a narrow, general kind of point, these individuals would spend their time essentially tearing down any idea that there was a conspiracy. And they were usually very active in doing so. And it was kind of like, well, why would you join a group that's main focus is to create public awareness about something that you state over and over again you don't believe in, except for the idea, of course, that maybe you're exactly what you're saying, which is a paid troll that does this kind of thing. I mean, somebody's got to...
I totally agree. Totally.
And of course, they call us paranoid again for that kind of idea. But all you got to do is look at, the most recently, the white paper that came from Cass Sunstein, and all of these other types of programs that have been out there to create disinformation, arguments in the ranks. You kind of know that you're succeeding, actually, when people are out there trying to debunk you or smash what you're doing. Because, after all, if you're not a threat in any way, shape, or form, they won't waste their time.
As a matter of fact,
go ahead.
Right, and they don't debunk just anybody. They usually debunk the most influential people within a group on this topic. And they try to get personal to get them all upset and so on. But the ones who are just new to the group, this and that, they don't even bother with these people. So they're targeting certain individuals. I don't have that problem anymore in my group because I've figured out a process. But now I have a different problem. Now they send me private emails. They insult me personally. I've had my life threatened. And what else? Okay. Oh. The latest attacks now are... I have to approve the posts that people post in my group because several hundred, I'm talking several hundred posts each 2 weeks about are porn posts or posts of that nature. And stuff you wouldn't believe. I mean, stuff that would make a penthouse look like the Bible, you know? So that didn't work. So that slowed down. So now they're sending malware or, you know, viruses. And I've been lucky so far. But whenever that happens, I warn my friends that they cannot post directly in my group once I eliminate them. So what they do is they just reply in a comment or something. They assume a new identity, but they're quickly found out. But you know you're on the right track when people attack you.
Yeah,
Why would so many people do that?
Well, that's what I was going to say again. Is you know that you're actually doing some good then if they're at you. You know, this is kind of like a badge of honor, really, because if you weren't being effective in any way, shape, or form, they wouldn't even bother. And yeah, this is one of the things they do. They try and debase and sort of attack the integrity of a group by adding all sorts of nonsense into the mix. And there's a couple different methods, and yeah, that's one of them for sure. They start adding in pornographic things. Stuff that's way off topic that just is, you know, clearly lunacy and ranting, so that they can identify themselves as a member of the group and therefore discredit your discussions, your opinions, your work based on the fact that, hey, look, this lunatic is part of them, and meanwhile it's somebody that they sent in there to do it themselves. So when you have opposition, you know, it's definitely a clear mark that you're getting somewhere.
Oh yeah, actually one of them flew over from Toronto to come and meet with me in Ottawa. And I met with him.
Mm.
And
how did that go, a troll face-to-face? I've never had to deal with that.
Yeah, I accepted it. I said, look, why do you want to see me? Oh, you're doing a great disservice to humanity. I said, well, let me put you straight. Let's meet together and we'll have coffee. And I said, bring a pad of paper and you explain to me your theories and I'll explain mine. And it went well for a while, and then I asked him questions he couldn't answer, and then he tried to change the focus of the conversation towards back to the same thing over and over again. So, but I tried to convert him. I saw that I wasted 3 days of my life talking to him. I mean, this guy was very, very persistent, and at the end, he was saying, don't you feel ashamed of yourself? What are your children going to be thinking of you in the future for even thinking something like this, and let alone talking about it to thousands of people? And I said, well, you know, we'll wait for it to happen. I don't want to. I don't want to get violent with these people. That's what they want. So, you know, he might even have liked that, but. I can't defend myself, but that's over, and now I don't have to deal with these people. I just have to deal with the malware now, and but the porn has died down, and they try something for a while. If that doesn't work, they think of another strategy, and maybe eventually they'll close my group down.
Oh, right. I'm actually surprised that you've been able to keep your group open as long as you have. Because in a lot of cases they find excuses to shut down this stuff or give, you know, service providers problems and things like that. You know, so what has been going on with the group lately?
Actually, it will happen.
Yeah, I'm sure it will eventually, but I mean, I'm surprised it's gone on this long, actually, Sylvain, because it's been around a while. I mean, how long has MAD been around?
MAD's been around for at least 4 years, maybe 5 years, and it wasn't my biggest group. I had a bigger group because I was fighting the recession back in 2008, and actually, I was more successful than with Mass Action Demand. It was called the Recession Survivors. I was in the media. I was on national TV on that one. And I was starting to make a difference because I had a very, very different approach than I do now. And but then eventually Facebook shut me down. When you make a difference, Facebook doesn't like that when you become a person of influence.
Oh, right, because the social media is okay as long as you're socializing about, what football jerseys you want to buy and what new pop star is running around dyeing their hair or whatever else. These things are all good to talk about endlessly ad nauseum. It's not a problem. But when you talk about real issues that are actually affecting the planet and you talk about anything that is outside of the general norm, as it were, regarding political discussions or anything like that, you automatically are a target. And the second that you're really, truly, and actually influential, you're right. This is precisely when the hammer kind of comes down. So for you, you're just waiting on when they're going to really shut you down. And again, that'll be sort of another badge of honor for you, because you'll know that you were really, truly a big threat when they decided that they had to unplug you from that, right?
Right, and I'll tell you when they will shut me down. And here's the key. They didn't shut down Occupy Wall Street. They didn't shut down We Are Change or all the Occupy movements for one reason. Because these groups complain. They say this is bad, and they're right in complaining. I'm not saying that they're not right. They're very right in what they're saying. However, none of these groups made it big. Well, in terms of size, nothing is bigger than the Occupy group. It was huge. Millions of people participated in different countries of the world. It was huge.
Right.
Occupy Berlin, Occupy this, Occupy that. Now, the reason why it didn't make any change, significant change, is that it offered no solutions. And that's what's going to happen with all the groups that just complain and they offer no solutions. The moment you start to offer the solutions, they shut you down.
Well, okay, that being the major difference, and of course you're definitely solution oriented. I mean, what type of solutions are you guys discussing now that will probably lead to getting you shut down?
Okay, we're not really discussing them now because people are afraid to talk about solutions, okay? But there are many solutions we could be discussing. Now, first of all, if global warming was such an issue, and if some people say the burning of fossil fuels, releases CO2, which plants love, by the way, they love CO2, we couldn't live CO2. But anyways, all we have to do is stop burning fossil fuels. And the moment you have a group with thousands of members who are not belief about is more aligned with the thinking of Dr. Tim Ball I think is in Calgary, and you can research him on YouTube and you will see what I think of warming. Okay, but that is one thing that we can do. Now, I'm not going to start insulting the police because they're not arresting the pilots. That's not in their jurisdiction, okay? What I'm trying to do is I've met with the police in 2 different police departments, and I said, let's not talk here. Let's have coffee. Let's talk about chemtrails and geoengineering. And they came, and we became friends. I haven't seen them in a while, but I've seen their badges, and so I know I've got cops on my side. these people are not all robots, you know. Neither are soldiers. That's why we're getting drones, because drones obey orders. They have no choice. But if you order a cop to shoot somebody or a soldier to shoot somebody, you give him an order from a superior officer, and he doesn't do it, you know, and then he has problems. But I used to be an officer in Corrections Canada, and I refused orders too. It doesn't make you very popular, I tell you that. But no, there are solutions to the problem of... I don't see climate change as being a problem right now. I see famine as a problem right now. I see the TPP as a problem with a higher priority. I focus on priorities. If the TPP becomes more important, I'm going to use mass action demand to stop that, because this is a war. And we have to be strategic. We have to have a war room, but unfortunately, very few people focus on the priorities.
Well, yeah, this.
We did have a small victory back a few years.
Sorry, you kind of cracked up there a little bit with the Skype.
Okay, go ahead.
What I was going to say is, but this is the thing, is that, is the chemtrail situation the priority now at this point, you think? Or, I mean, are we really faced by greater things? Because it's my concern that we're actually faced by such a multi-dimensional attack here regarding all of these different modes of warfare, essentially, as a population. It's kind of hard to prioritize this stuff at this point. It's like, which angle do you want to fight back against first, And chemtrails are a large issue, and I'm wondering, do you think that that's still like one of the top priorities that we should be looking at, or do you think it is shifting away from that and into other concerns? I mean, famine and starvation has been a problem, since there were civilizations. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. In a nutshell, I will give you one solution in one word, and I will explain after. And that word is integrity. Mm-hmm. Now, I believe there should be political integrity. There should be corporate integrity. There should be banking integrity. There should be police integrity. And that is my focus now. I don't do it on the internet right away because it'll be so effective. I'm doing it live in person with meetings, with panel discussions with experts. I'm talking the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. I met with him this week actually. And former Deputy Prime Minister. I'm talking about Paul Hellyer, for those who know him, who wrote the book, The Money Mafia. And the book just came out last week. So you ask solutions. The solution is, I believe there is good in every officer, every soldier, some politicians, and if there could be a way to increase the integrity of these people, to protect the whistleblowers, for instance. These are people of integrity and courage as well. They risk everything because they stand for what they believe. So I'm working on that solution right now. And back to your earlier question, what is the priority? Well, you folks in the States, you've got the NDAA. And nobody batted an eye, and it just passed in a stroke of a pen. It was written into law. And even you can be snatched up by some guys in a van, and you have no legal protection, and they can detain you as long as they want and keep you in jail, and as long as they don't waterboard you. I mean, this is the United States. That's the reality. I mean, and they're doing it already. I mean, they didn't build all these camps in the U.S. for nothing.
Yeah, they certainly didn't, and of course there's more to it than that. There's a whole lot of the legislation which has sort of lobotomized the psychology behind our freedoms in this country, slowly but surely. It's been incrementally done. People didn't bat an eyelash at Patriot Act 1 and 2 when they were first passed, in the general populace. And the NDAA, of course, the this is all been part of the problem, and I find it interesting that you think that integrity is one of the things that needs to be attacked. It needs to be reinforced, actually, not attacked, but the lack of integrity, let's just say, in those in positions of authority needs to be addressed on a mass scale. I think that that's actually the key to a whole lot of what's going on here, because after all, if the individuals that had something to do with the chemtrails, if the individuals that had something to do with the out-of-control mechanized police forces we have in this country, if the individuals that had something to do with a whole lot of this stuff that were going on would sort of get back to their integral realities regarding why they got into these things in the first place, and weren't sitting there simply serving psychopaths, as it were, a lot of these things would disappear all by themselves if we took the enforcement mechanisms out of the hands of those that have this agenda. So I think you're exactly right there.
There are two approaches to integrity. One of them is to inspire the people to do the right thing, those who are in power, the cops, the bankers, the politicians, that's one way, but there's another way, too, that you can actually force integrity upon them. And I'll give you an example. In the United States, there seems to be a new trend of cops shooting unarmed people. And even 12-year-old kids, I heard, and shooting them dead. I mean, not in the leg, as they're supposed to do by law. I was an officer, too. And you're not supposed to aim for the right between his eyes and in the middle of his chest. Mm-hmm. That's a public execution. But they're going to be having a surprise pretty soon, because these cops who are not using integrity will soon be seeing members of their own family protesting on the front lines. Their sisters, their daughters, their nieces, their cousins. Their father, their mother will be on the front lines of the officers. I'm anxious to see how integrity will hit them all of a sudden. They'll turn around and they'll drop their weapons. Okay? But the elite have a trick against that as well, too. When there's an incident in a city where there's a protest, they bring cops from another city. Okay? That's how sneaky they are. These people have no souls who do that. Okay? And sometimes they even bring them from another country. They're paid mercenaries. Kill a few Canadians. Kill a few Americans. So, I would prefer the route of inspirational integrity, because I believe in the goodness of all people. And and we got to start somewhere. I mean, I don't know who your audience is, but maybe start with them.
No, absolutely, and this is one of the things. And of course, we are talking about the possibilities of foreign troops being brought in for law enforcement into different countries. People that are not geographically tied to an area are, of course, less likely to care about the community or the individuals that they may destroy or injure. And this is one of the favorite strategies of what I'll just generally call the elites at this point in time, is to utilize individuals who don't have a vested interest in serving and protecting the populations, as it were. Tell you what, if you don't mind, do you want to take a few phone calls if we get them?
Yeah.
All right, so anybody that wants to join in on the conversation, if you have me on your Skype list, go right ahead. I will add you straight on in. If not, you can call 718-717-8296, and I will put you straight on the air. And you can ask a question or make a comment about any of the stuff we've discussed. Of course, we started with chemtrails. I'm still getting back into that now and then, but we've sort of covered a kind of a wide range of things here, and sort of picked Sylvain's brain and gotten an idea of exactly the kind of guy he is, in my estimation. So I don't know how you feel about that, Sylvain, but that's usually what happens on my show somehow or other anyway. We start with a really narrow topic, and all of a sudden we get to know the person we're talking to a little bit more. And I'm pretty happy with that so far. I hope you are. But as I said, yeah, feel free to call in, 718-717-8296, or if you got me on your Skype list. If you don't have me on your Skype list and you want to join in, charles.ochelli, just make a request now and I'll drop you in. That simple. So, we'll let that go out because there's a little bit of a delay. And, you see, but this is the thing, you get to these core issues. And here's a call coming on now. Okay, caller 252, you're on the air.
Yeah. Hi. This is Charles Ochelli. Hi.
Yep, that's my son, actually. What's up?
I have a question.
What's up, Junior? What's your question?
How do those who are doing the spraying protect themselves from chemtrails?
Well, that's a weird question, too, because that's something we didn't even get into, huh? Is, how is it that these planes obviously require pilots, although I've heard about the possibilities of using drones? How is it that they're dealing with the effects of this crap? I mean, do you know anything about that, Sylvain?
I don't know the fact. I don't know the real reason, but it's a very, very good question. Okay. Well, first of all, those who are elite drive elite cars. They live in elite homes. And they don't walk outside like the rest of us do because they need security. So they're always indoors, so to speak. Okay? They're always in a controlled environment, whether at their office, at a friend's house, or so on. It could be that these cars and homes and offices and conference rooms have special filters. I don't know the answer to that. It's worth looking into, but it could be done. Also, another thing too. They could find out that a certain area is being sprayed, so they just stay indoors on that day, a certain time. I don't know.
Right, and it leads to another logical question: is that if you assume that these pilots are your average human being, a lot of them might have families and things. You wonder if they have any clue exactly the type of damage they're doing to everybody down there, including their own children, their own mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, best friends, etc. I wonder about that all the time regarding these guys. I've never actually heard from any of these pilots, though, because, I wouldn't want to show my face if I was involved in that program either, so I get it, but it does lead to an interesting idea. I mean, how is it that they're not understanding the damage that they're doing, I wonder? I mean, don't you wonder that as well, Sylvain?
Oh, I do. Pilots are not allowed to discuss their missions with us, and, or else they're court-martialed or even worse, okay? They're not allowed to talk about it. But a lot of them have kids. A lot of them have spouses. And if any of the kids of these pilots or spouses or friends of these pilots are listening right now, maybe you could ask the question of the pilot that you know, and hopefully you get an answer. However, I think that most people are not evil. They're very, very good. And I'm talking about the Air Force people. I would think it would be rather a question of them being brainwashed into thinking that they're doing a good thing for the planet. Actually, it doesn't have to be Air Force. It could be commercial, because maybe they need a certain concentration of metallic substances in the air to keep the wireless telecommunication system working properly. The cell phones, smartphones, the wireless internet. It could be that it gives them a greater range or whatnot. It could be commercial. It doesn't have to be military, though I'm pretty confident it did start with the military. So, but no, overall, I think are the ones who protect our countries, who die for freedom, the freedom that the politicians take away from them and from us. I think they have a lot more integrity than a lot of politicians. They're following orders, but if they were convinced it was bad, they wouldn't do it, and that's what I think.
Well,
Maybe
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead, bud. It's all you.
Okay. Maybe they try to ignore what they do.
Well, yeah, maybe they try to ignore it, but generally speaking, somebody who is in a position where they're, serving their country, they are usually not the people that are doing the evil things for the sake of evil. They're generally being misled. I mean, you have no further to look but those, who believed when they were enlisting, post 2001, that they were going into the military to fight the evil terrorists who had done horrible things to us and all that kind of thing. If they had imagined in their mind that they were going to wind up going into places like Iraq that had nothing to do even with the official story of 9/11, if they imagined that they were going to be doing that kind of thing and spreading, depleted uranium around and absolutely butchering local populations, I don't think they would have signed up, because it wasn't their intent to become embroiled in these terrible things that are going on. So I translate that to the people doing the chemtrails thing. They're likely being told a story, and try not to breathe into the phone too much, buddy.
Sorry.
It's okay. But they were likely misled into it by being told that they're doing a good thing. Like Sylvain was talking about, the possibility of, derailing or deferring global warming or something like that. It seems as though this is one of the great justifications for it. So it seems like this would be what they're being told. Now, I can't say that for certain because, as I said before, I've never spoken to one of these pilots directly. But it does make me wonder about the individual that's sitting in that seat. And of course, it does make a whole lot of sense that they want to get drones to do this, because, hey, if you can take the conscience out of the equation, it's a whole lot easier to send a machine to do something that's negative, that has negative impact on humanity, than it is to send a man who actually might have a conscience.
Well, do good people do bad things, evil things? And the answer is yes, if you can brainwash them into believing that what they are doing is the lesser of two evils. And I will give you an example that we discussed earlier. The pilots that sprayed Agent Orange over Vietnam, they knew they would be spraying their own troops and killing their own troops. But they had an order, and they were told whatever, it's going to end the war or whatnot, which it didn't. Another example is the Hiroshima pilot who dropped a bomb over Hiroshima, and the one who flew with and dropped the bomb over Nagasaki. They knew they would be killing 100,000 people. That's a murder, okay? Premeditated and planned murder. They knew they would be killing that many people. What they were not told, however, but they found out after they had killed all these people, was that Japan had surrendered before they dropped the bombs. And they dropped the bombs anyways because, they wanted to show the rest of the world that they had the capacity to do this. James Etherly was on that mission, and he committed suicide, but he was decorated with all kinds of useless medals on his chest. Mm-hmm. For doing this great deed that was a lesser of two evils, and it shortened the war. I was in the embassy of Japan in Ottawa because the former ambassador, I used to know him quite well. We used to chat sometimes, and once he brought one of the old ministers of defense, and I had a talk with him, and I said, "Why did Japan lose? Is it because of Hiroshima?" He said, No. He said, "We surrendered before that." He said, "Well, why did they lose?" Because the Americans and the Allies surrounded Japan because Japan doesn't produce oil. And so you need oil or petroleum products to refine them for the submarines, for the planes and the tanks and everything. And so the machinery just came to an end.
Right. It was actually the embargo against Japan controlling the amount of petroleum they could import, and literally keeping them from being able to get the oil for their machines that actually defeated them, which was a sound strategy. But it was sold to the military ranks as far as using this horrible weapon that the world had never seen unleashed before on human beings. It was the justification here was that it would shorten the war, yes, and it would also save a great many American lives, because trying to invade Japan, because it wasn't known worldwide that they were willing to surrender already, to try and get them to surrender, an invasion was going to be necessary, and the amount of American lives they were talking about losing in that invasion was immense. So yeah, you kill 100,000 Japanese, but you could save 2 million American lives, and I'm pulling that number out of the air, but it was something like that. It was sort of like, well, you're doing the lesser of two evils, so you're doing a good thing. And this is how a lot of people are convinced to commit horrendous, heinous acts against their fellow man, is under the guise that it is definitely something which is preferable to something that will occur if they don't do it. So that's why the global warming thing seems to be a likely way to sell it to these pilots. But again, these guys have never really come out. We don't really have the information directly from their mouths, and we haven't really been able to catch anybody, as far as I know, explaining completely why these things are being done. But this is definitely a hint, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you got any other questions, Charlie?
Yes, I do. One more.
Oh, okay.
How do I know that what I'm seeing are in fact fake clouds or chemtrails?
Well, the difference between, you mean the difference between like the contrail and the chemtrail, or the difference between a fake cloud and a real cloud? Which one?
The difference between a contrail and a chemtrail.
Well, go ahead, Sylvain. I mean, he's a young kid. He's my son. But go ahead and, if you want to, explain to him what the difference is when he sees it in the sky.
Okay. Now, the contrail is what... It's a small little white trail of, sort of like humidity, condensation, behind a jet, which is normal under certain circumstances, depending on the relative humidity and the temperature and so on. Now, when you have a contrail that extends for 50 miles, and it still stays a solid line, and it doesn't dissipate, because after a while, if you look at ordinary clouds, they change shape. You just lie down in the grass one day, they change shape, and sometimes some parts of it disappear. So it would dissipate, but this doesn't. And as a matter of fact, many of them have like a feathering effect, okay? And it seems as if things are going off to the side. So there are many ways to tell. And I interviewed, during my 24-hour radiothons, a number of pilots, 4 of them, and they're saying that the conditions, that at a certain altitude, there should be no chemtrails that last like 50 miles long. They can even be, these can even be seen by satellite from space. They're that long. They're saying that it is impossible for this to happen. I had a friend of mine who's a pilot in southern United States who actually took a video, and at my request, the pilot did not speak into the video, but did as I asked, and actually took a video of chemtrails that are like miles and miles long. In this case, it was over 100 miles long.
Wow.
At an altitude, this pilot was flying at 17,000 feet, and this was much lower, several thousand feet lower than that, and they're not supposed to be happening, And also another thing, too, is if you look at flightradar24.com and you look at which flights are coming, you will notice that it's, we have a lot of traffic up in the air all the time, especially if you live close to New York City. You've got thousands of planes flying. Why aren't there like crisscrosses of chemtrails or, all over the sky? It's only certain planes from certain airlines coming from certain origins or places of origin that you see that. But anyways, it gets complicated, but basically the very long ones, are not contrails.
Right, and the oddity is that, like you point out there, that if every plane created these things, we'd see nothing but them as it is, because the sky is constantly crisscrossed by air traffic. It's only specific planes, it's only at specific times, and contrails break up. They dissipate, like Sylvain was saying, and they don't do this thing where, see, you call it feathering, and feathering's a pretty good explanation, but some of them look to me almost like a pack of ribs. You know what I mean? Where it's like coming from the spine of an animal, and they extend outward and they turn into a larger cloud, which is a weird thing. And a contrail doesn't do that; it just kind of fades away and goes away. This stuff has a lot more in it than just slightly differently heated moisture, which a contrail is.
Yeah. And another way too, if you wait for the summer and lie down on the grass near a beach somewhere, and you look at the sky, and that's what really, really convinced me. I saw this plane do a chemtrail from one side of the horizon to the other side.
Yes.
And I stayed there and I watched it for a long time, and guess what? That expanded and covered half of the sky from one plane. Now, that is not humidity, that is not a cloud formation, that is something else.
And chemtrails come in different sizes, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, all different sizes. In fact, you'll see them in different patterns. Sometimes you have like a crisscross pattern where, it looks like somebody's playing tic-tac-toe in the sky. More commonly, what I see are these striping patterns where they seem to have a bunch of them together that sort of create a cloud bank after a while, but it takes some time, and they do actually create like a cloud bank where there was none prior to that at all.
And they're sprayed either of two ways. Either the chemicals are added to the jet fuel, and there are patents, and you can look in Google patents for that too, and they're used as flight extender. And that means that the plane can go further, and they're used for different reasons as well too. And in the other case, they're actually sprayed with a spray nozzle from containers inside the plane. There are two possible ways that I know of, anyways.
Right. So, how's that, Charlie? Did that answer a bunch of your questions about this?
Yes.
All right. Well, if anybody else wants to join into the conversation, go ahead and call in or drop in on my Skype list. I'll be happy to add you in. But you about good there, or you got something else you want to add in, Charlie?
I'm good.
All right. So,
good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Charlie. Yeah.
My son, he's named after me. He's 12 and just starting to learn about a lot of this stuff, and chemtrails is one of those things that I've generally tried to explain to him, but he's only heard it from me, so glad that he wanted to call in and ask about it. Anyhow,
he can make up his own mind about it. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is I want him to look into it and see for himself what it is we're talking about, and mainly what I told him is look up at the sky, see what a regular cloud looks like, and then watch what happens when one of these planes leaves something there, and you'll see there's a difference in the way these things behave, and at the very least you'll know that something very unnatural is occurring. And you also watch some other planes that don't leave these things go by. We're in North Carolina, so the airplane traffic is not super heavy, but on certain given days, and like I said, it seems to be very well timed with when there's going to be precipitation over a particular area. It seems as though these trails do start to bunch up right before the precipitation hits. And I'm thinking that that's a way to deliver it to the ground level and to make sure that nothing is missed in the spraying, Mm-hmm. But then again, like I said, what do I know? I just observe what I observe and kind of understand that part of this is bad and that there's a whole lot more to it that they're not telling us, and therefore I don't trust that in any way, shape, or form.
But conspiracies, some of them are true, and you look in the United States. This country, right now it's the greatest military nation in the world. You know, you've assassinated 4 of your presidents, and you've tried to assassinate 16 of them. I mean, it's not a conspiracy, it's a historical fact, you know.
Exactly.
And, you know, it's, you know, you don't have to worry about terrorists. I mean, you know, these are facts. Bad things happen in a country, and they're not killed by Muslims. They were killed by other Americans.
Right, and in our short history, we've done a whole lot more damage to ourselves domestically than any foreign army ever has. You know, when our cities are burned, it's us who burns them. When we go to war and lose life on a massive scale on our own soil, it's our own people turned against one another. These are realities, and these things were all done by manipulation, of course. And you do point out the presidential assassinations. We decapitate our own leadership here without any sort of efforts, and these are all absolute realities, and they didn't just involve lone nuts every single time. Not saying that a couple of times we didn't have a few lone nuts, but it is much less likely. The lone wolf theory is much less likely than the fact that a group of people get together and pull together a plan in order to further an agenda, which we do see throughout our history, including the founding of this nation, was essentially a conglomeration of individuals who were fighting back against their government, which, you know, again, is a group of, oh my goodness, almost like terrorists. If you were the British Crown, you would have considered the people that set forth our founding documents terrorists. You know, if you considered that we were supposed to be under the rule of the English government at the time, we were essentially the terrorists who broke free. So it's all in your perception of how you look at it, and that's for sure. We do enough damage to ourselves, but in this case, it seems as though the corporate interests are using the mechanisms that they can, and in some cases it is commercial airlines, in other cases it's military planes, to spray this raid for humans over the population. And I think we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of the amount of damage that can be done by doing so.
Oh, yeah.
Now, geoengineering, for me, it's one of those echoing problems, because geoengineering, like I said before, is, you know, look, if we did control a hurricane and cause it not to land on the shoreline or whatever else, let's just say that was part of the agenda regarding this. You know, if that's the case, it has caused other problems. You know, you don't simply mess around with the weather systems and expect them to, you know, to not have negative consequences further down the road. You know, and people bring up HAARP in this regard as well, which, you know, very well could be one of those things that works in conjunction with the chemtrails. But at the same time, the actual residual effects of what's going on here, I still say, are in the unknown category, and can't be really good.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I totally agree.
So, you know, and then this is my general position, and I admit that I'm not, you know, highly researched on the subject and all that, but I don't need to do a whole lot of research to understand when something is bad for me. You know, it's not hard to imagine that aluminum is not a good thing to introduce into the ecosystem. It's not an imagined thing that, you know, that's something that's being done in secret and being done under the cover of security and so on and so forth is usually not something that I want to see happen. Go ahead.
I don't know how old you are, but I don't know if you remember an actor by the name of Buddy Epson.
Mm-hmm.
He used to be in the Beverly Hillbillies, and he was the old guy. Well, anyways, I just want to mention that for those people who don't think that alumina is dangerous, they should read. When they made the movie The Wizard of Oz, he was actually cast as the Tin Man. And in those days, they didn't have colored paste. What they did is they put some kind of a bonding agent on your skin, like a weak glue, and they would take a fan and blow some alumina all over his face to make his face look metallic. The moment they did that, and he inhaled some of it, he was sent to the hospital. He was under intensive care for 6 months and almost died, and they replaced him. as an actor, and they used another actor for the movie. And he really wanted that role because he was a great dancer. And so it's very, very harmful.
Right. Buddy Ebsen, I think I remember him in the Barnaby Jones series, actually.
Yeah.
Yep. Same guy. Of course, he was best known on the Beverly Hillbillies. But yeah, the original Tin Man, when they tried to introduce this stuff just to get it onto his skin the way they did it, and he wound up inhaling it. That's a true story. Aluminum is not good for you. And of course, the stuff that's usually in aluminum, like soda and things like that, are usually not very good for you either, but hey, who's counting? Aluminum is just not something that is conducive to healthy biological organisms, okay? But if you're Monsanto, you can definitely make some crops that are resistant to dealing with aluminum-rich soil, which again shows us that they're definitely, in line with the agenda of those that are spraying this stuff. And I'll tell you something, anybody that's on the Monsanto team is definitely not somebody that I want to endorse, encourage, or even allow to operate, without checking on what's going on. And them acting in secrecy regarding this has been a problem since day one. Mm-hmm. But I do note that this has, although we're aware that it's got a long history, it has been increased in recent years, and I think it's because we're looking at the sort of the expansion, the increase in the speed, let's just say, of the agenda here regarding what seems to be the culling of the population through sickness, through dysfunction in one way or another. Aluminum is easily linkable to cognitive disorders. I mean, when you post, when you do an autopsy on an individual who's got Alzheimer's, it's quite often you can find plenty of aluminum in their, mangled brains. This is obviously something that's not good for you, and this is something that we do need to somehow put a stop to. So this is the kind of thing that you're working up towards with Mass Action Demand. And also they can find you at Canadian Spartacus, all one word, too, right?
Yep.
And in general, you're also on Facebook if you want to just find Mass Action Demand on Facebook. I mean, there's lots of good groups out there that have good discussions. There's lots of people that are trying to bring this to the forefront. Like I said before, Dane Wigginton does the show on here on UCY, Geoengineering Watch. This is definitely all worthwhile and all part of the greater globalist agenda. And, of course, you can see that Sylvain is also concerned with the sovereignty of his own country, which is Canada, by the way. And also concerned with us and everybody else in the world, because, after all, I'm sure, Sylvain, you're not thinking to yourself, well, it's okay if I can put a stop to it in Canada, that's fine. The rest of the world can choke on it. I'm very sure that that's not how you think.
No. It's a global effort. We're fighting the global elites. That's what we're doing, and so my priority is to bring integrity back to our leaders and to find a common ground for everybody. And I'm not fighting the cops or the politicians. I'm trying to find the good in them and to see if they can help us solve this issue. And because I asked a cop, I said, look, if it's not your jurisdiction, if this is a crime that's being committed, whose jurisdiction is it? And they said, well, the Air Force is the Queen. And they handle the airports here in Canada. So it's I don't know why we have a Queen in another country. That's another issue, but that's the case. And I said, look, if I rent a plane tomorrow, and I take a bag of powder, purple powder, and mix it with onions or something, or sulfur, and I spread that over the population, will you arrest me? There was no answer. If you drop 1 liter of oil on the street, you will be arrested. But if you drop millions of liters of it continually, even now in the Gulf of Mexico, very little happens to you. And there's a cap on what you can pay for it.
Well, yeah, because even though in America corporations are people, we do have to remember that the corporations are the people that don't have to answer for any illegality or damage they do, generally speaking, unless somebody gets the gumption to actually sue them or something like that. But a good point there, and that's something that needs to be kept in mind here. You spill some oil on the ground, you could possibly be arrested for contaminating the ground. With that wonderful petroleum product, which is fully supported by just about every government on the planet, and also is part of the greater corporatist mechanism that is out there. This is all fine and dandy, but you can be punished for that. However, if you're a greater interest and you have the money to get yourself a plane and something to spray, you could easily drop over 1 million people's lawns. Plenty of poisons, and that's called acceptable because it's all being done under the cover of secrecy and with the approval of the corporate interests, right? So, interesting point there as well, Sylvain.
Yeah. So it's I highly recommend the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington for anybody who wants to study on integrity in politics. And it's an old movie, it's black and white, but it's well done, and you will not be bored. And it shows you how laws are made in a country. And it's an interesting fact that the senators or whoever signs your laws, the bills into law in your country, they don't read them. They don't even know what the bill says. They don't even understand it. They're just told, well, look, we had a team of legal experts go over it and looks fine, just sign your name here. And that is bad.
Right, and even in I think it was the movie Fahrenheit 9/11, and I'm not somebody who generally points people toward Michael Moore, but I found it really informative that people were shocked over the idea that representative was sitting there and saying, well, sit down, my son, we don't actually read any of the bills we pass anyway. This is the reality. Generally speaking, these things are huge documents, hundreds of pages long. In the case of the Obamacare bill, it was something that was taller than myself if you stacked it page to page. This is how huge these pieces of legislation are, and they actually sign all sorts of things into existence without ever knowing what it is they're actually signing or voting for. That this is one of the realities of our government at this point in time, and something that should be kept in mind regarding the chemtrail thing. I bet you there's a whole lot of stuff that can be unearthed if somebody takes the time to find out that these things were approved of by the legislature, probably incrementally, and probably more so in the recent couple of decades, because we've seen it, amp up quite a bit. Now, I've only got about 7 or 8 minutes left, Sylvain. I wanted to see if there was any suggestions you had for people as far as places to go to learn about this. Bring up, your group and what you're doing and all that kind of stuff. Suggestions for reading material, whatever it is you like, sir. I'll give you the last few minutes to go into it.
Okay, thanks. Well, on Facebook, it's facebook.com/group/chemtrail hyper network, one word, chemtrail, no S. And Geoengineering Watch is a very, very excellent site also for getting information. And I just want to leave you and your audience and your son, if he's still listening, with a hope that we can find common ground among within our movement, and within all the people who are actually doing these things that are not good, and make it stop. And then we can focus on the larger issues. This is a priority. It should stop, and our government should stop lying to us as they are. So that's all I have to say.
Well, and again, I do appreciate your time, and we'll have to do this again, although I want to encourage more audience participation. I mean, I wanted to get into the 101 a little bit, and like I said, kind of get to know you a little bit on the air, and go through a few different things. I'm going to be more fascinated if I get to do this with you again about what caused you to leap to action and to want to create this group and everything like that. I want to know a little more about that. But exactly how your priority got set and all that's also interesting. But it is one of those things that is right over our heads, and strangely enough, we do have a very hard time getting people that are less aware out there to even look up at the sky. I mean, they're too busy staring down at their fondle slab of choice and playing, the new version of Candy Crush and what have you, to take a look at the world around them and getting them to look up. Hey, that almost sounds like an effort. So, that's something that a lot of people don't want to do. But for those that do want to get involved in this, yeah, definitely I would suggest Geoengineering Watch. Find Sylvain on Facebook. Find Mass Action Demand. What was that other one that you suggested in the groups?
Geoengineering Watch. That's not my group, but it's a good one. And so I highly recommend that people do their own research. I won't tell them where to go exactly. Just look up chemtrail and geoengineering in Google and YouTube and make your own research. You won't have to go far. Within 1 hour, you'll be able to make an opinion on this. And I just want to leave a little story. I know we have a few minutes. I was 12 years old, the same age as your son, and I witnessed something very horrible and beautiful at the same time. My father stopped the car, and there was a crowd of people in close to the highway, several hundred, between 500 to 1,000 people making a circle around a car that was smoking. There were two people trapped inside, a man who was driving, because back in those days, men drove cars, and times have changed. Now everybody drives cars, but fire caught, and my father went to the car. Everybody was watching, and they kept a safe distance. And he kept screaming at the people. He tried to open the door, but the handle was too hot to touch. He tried to smash the window with his feet to get the lady out, and he couldn't. And so he yelled out and trying to talk in English, but he's a Frenchman, and to ask for a crowbar or hammer to smash the window. Finally, somebody moved and gave it to him, and they rescued the lady. They took the lady out, and her clothes was burnt on her, and her hair was all burnt up. It was a horrible sight. She was still full of, surrounded by smoke, and she kept on screaming, my husband, and they went on the other side, but it was too late for him. But here is what I wanted to leave you with, is that very few people will move or do anything unless the people inside that car is somebody they know. But I think we're all in that car. And we should start helping each other and realizing that there are certain emergencies. And one day, that'll be us in there. So we should stop being inactive. I don't know what to say to convince people to do something about anything. I guess I'll learn one day, but I hope we will do something. At least one of your audience should do something.
Well, I hope so too, and it's one of the things that I try and encourage people about is that, realize this, it's not us and them, it's all of us actually, because we all have to share this one particular planet until such time as you have an alternative out there. This is where we all are. So what is going to affect some of us will eventually affect all of us, so we need to start caring about our fellow man one way or another. And this is one of the things that is missed quite a bit, I would say, among people talking about these kinds of things. We need to understand that we're all in this together. because tyranny has landed in a particular nation a little harder than it has in your particular backyard, does not mean it will not come to you. Because a certain group of people is being poisoned in a slightly different area of this small planet, it doesn't mean that that poison is not going to get to you eventually too, and to your children and to all of their children. This is one of the things that needs to be encouraged. Is we need to act together, we need to stand together, and we need to get back to being the socially interactive and interwoven creatures that we are supposed to be, and stop utilizing the technology to separate ourselves, but start utilizing it to unify ourselves, to speak up and to do something positive. And, of course, the first thing that we need to do is to begin to speak up, to understand what we're speaking about, and to go after the things that are the greater concerns. Thank you for joining me. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
See, but I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, crystals and fondle slab of choice. I don't know what that was. Doesn't really matter. Internet, professional records, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from, as long as it's real. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have just read two sources.